Hi, this is the Restaurant Whisperer. We're back. Blair and I are back to
Hello,
talk about,
everyone.
we're going to talk about some restaurant things today. The harassing customer,
Customers that
um,
harass
customers that harass.
and unruly customers and how to handle them and what to do.
Yes.
We've all been
Now,
there. These are questions. Go ahead.
well, Blair has a background in working in restaurants. Um, we haven't really talked about her experiences, but I'm sure she has a few. Um, Having a restaurant of my own, I have several. And basically, what we're doing is we're going to do a lot of interviews with bartenders and servers that are coming up. And we're putting out some things that we're going to talk to them about. So let's get it started. What do you think?
Let's get it started. I'm excited. This is a conversation that a lot of people have had that have between servers and bartenders up to management and owners, how to deal with unruly customers, especially customers that are unruly and that are harassing staff, but yet are regular customers. What do you do? How do you handle it? When does it become? When do you? One of my things is when do you I mean, that's it's a tightrope to walk because you don't want to lose. I mean, you can throw out if somebody's unruly and they just walked into your restaurant the first time and they're in there acting like a complete jerk. That's an easy call. What happens when somebody's been in coming into your restaurant for a decade or more, or 5 years and things like that? And for whatever reason, their behavior is starting to get out of control. They weren't always like that, but they're turning into a problem. What do you do? How do you handle it? When do you make the final call? What's the criteria for making the final call? Do you create a criteria for making these final calls? And that goes for just harassment in general. And then SH, we can't say things. There's certain things we can't say on YouTube, but harassment in a uh, you know in a way that's unwelcome, um, and just bad behavior and things like that. So that's what we want to talk about today. Keith and I,
No
I know
means no.
no means no, and I know that in our discussions that you've had, I think with the last restaurant that you're involved with, you had two instances of harassment of waitresses, of staff, and that was between staff, and then one was a customer. Am I right?
No, well, two lawsuits
Two losses.
that
Okay.
two loss two situations that turned into lawsuits that I wasn't even aware that happened until after they happened.
Tell us about
Uh,
it
be,
as much as you
well,
can, obviously.
yeah, I have to be careful, but the first one was a bartender who wasn't getting
And
along
let's
with the kid.
just for the viewers that don't know you, describe what type of restaurant it was. It was a single owned establishment, had been there. It was a local place. It
100
wasn't that
years.
he's not talking about, folks, for the viewers. He's not talking about a corporate restaurant. This was a small local restaurant in a very high upscale, one of the wealthiest communities in the entire country, I believe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So how many seats were there?
Inside there were 80. Outside there were 100, over
Okay.
100.
So,
So during nice months, 200.
okay.
So
So yeah, but this is not a corporate restaurant. It was a privately owned boutique type restaurant. Continue.
yes, and we had rules about this. We had a handbook for our viewers out there. This isn't something that didn't go unaddressed. Um, we had rules, we had stipulations, but sometimes bartenders or servers, they might let things go a little further maybe than they should because there's always that tip money there.
Right.
And in the two cases that we're talking about right now. One was much larger than the other one, but I didn't know about it until way after the fact because nobody said anything to me. Now, apparently the staff knew some things about it, but I wasn't informed. And basically, a bartender was in a little squabble with the chef and the kitchen staff. And I guess it was sexually, uh, had sexual contact. And today, I probably don't know the entire true story, but it ended up in court. It ended up costing all in $250,000. And that's an expensive lesson to learn. And
Sure.
for obvious reasons, I can't get into the details because I'm not looking for any problems here. The other one, which I wasn't aware of either, but although I was made aware of it soon after, and and that was actually a much smaller one that got settled relatively quick, but it was with between a manager and a server, and this is a really today, especially a precarious situation for the restaurant owner, the restaurant managers. Um, what do you think?
Right, with how women, not and men get harassed too. Let's be honest. I mean, there are men get
Yeah,
harassed, but
they
you know,
do, but it's
with
different,
women getting right, exactly. But I mean, they do so. But which YouTube likes to be everybody to be very politically correct, and men do to get harassed. But it is for the most part women. It's very touchy now, and women are these aren't the days of Richard Dawson anymore from Family Feud, where people just welcome like hugs and flirting. I mean, I love Richard Dawson, don't get me wrong, but those days are over. And women, and thank goodness, there are women out there that are just looking for a lawsuit, like especially, in a restaurant, but women finally feel empowered enough and not afraid to say, hey, this guy's bothering me, and that's when, um, and that takes us to unruly customers. What happens when your customer are starting to harass your staff in a way, especially a good customer? What do you do? They feel emboldened that they can do it. Do you give the customer another chance, or if there's something that's been filed, you can't let them back in there ever again? There's a situation going on right now that we know of that is something like that.
Well, I gave no chances. When a server came to me or a bartender came to me and told me of a situation, and I had those situations. I had where customers put
Oh,
their hand on a server and touched them in an inappropriate place, and one and done. You're out. You're out. You're done.
Now,
I had
people do lie though also. Do you take the for legal reasons as a restaurant owner, manager, whatever. Let's just say I was working there and I came to you and I said this customer grabbed me in some way, shape, or form. Do you automatically just have to take my word for it? Is that the safest way to go? Because I could be lying and
it's
not
the
like that,
safest
just
way
not
to
like that
go,
customer also.
but I will listen to your story. I will listen to
You'll
the
listen to their
customer's
story.
story. Yeah, you have to listen.
Right.
And in every case that I had, they didn't deny it. They generally didn't deny it. They generally would say, "Well, I didn't mean anything by it. It was just a joke. I was just being funny." And you can't. they're basically saying that they did it. And
So do you let them
ha
back
ha
in
ha
or no?
ha. I'm sorry. Um,
And then do you
I
let them
actually
back in
had
ever again?
well, I had one customer who did it, who touched a hostess, who wrote me a letter a year after it happened and pleaded with me to get back in because it was a local establishment and everybody went there. And there weren't a lot of places to go. So I didn't let him back in. I didn't do it
You
because I
can't.
wasn't looking for more. The person who had it happened to, not that this matters, but the person who he had the altercation with was still there. I wasn't looking for litigation. No, no. You always have to, no means no, and you always have to err on the side of caution and what's right for the ladies.
Right. What if it's one of your best customers? You still have to do that. You still because then you don't want to. Then the restaurant doesn't want to be known, even if it's your best customer, as a harasser, enabler, somebody that condones that. Because then that'll get. I mean, it's just such a touchy subject now with everybody.
Well,
You can't
that's a
look.
real that's a really good question, and I don't believe I ever had that situation with a really one of our best customers. Because if they were really one of your best customers, they're smart enough not to do that.
That's true.
So
How about a regular customer and that's friends with, uh, a regular customer that's in there with a lot of your other good customer. There's just going to be touchy situations where, but a line has to be drawn, and again, you don't want it to get out that they condone that.
I guess
Or do you let them
every
back in and just keep them away from the server? There's a million ways you can slice it and dice it, and that's why the conversation's interesting.
well, sometimes you get an older customer and they still think it's 1966 and they're pressing the envelope a little bit and they don't really mean anything by it, but they do mean something by it. I want to be careful how I'm portraying this. And so they're flirting, and the server will maybe to a degree go along with it because maybe they're wealthy and maybe they tend to tip that server very well. And I'm talking really well. So they'll take more of it maybe than they should. And of course, I'm the last to find out because neither of them want me to know, and neither of
Right.
them will do it in my earshot. So it's really a precarious situation. Although I'll say it tends to happen more often with the bartenders than it does the server. And I'm not
Okay.
saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying it tends to happen more with the bartender. So
Right.
it's a tough. Did it ever happen to you?
Um, Somebody making advances. Nothing
Yeah.
that was nothing that was so nothing that jumps. I mean, yes, but these are even 5 years ago. It was different than it is now. 10 years ago, than it is different than it is now. What people can get away, like we were sort of conditioned even 20 years ago when I was waitress. You're conditioned in a sense of it's all relative and what is just the societal norm. So while I found it offensive, it wasn't while I found, like, I'm sure I got a yes, I just can't think of anything specific, but I'm just running through my memories now. While I found it offensive, society probably wasn't going to find it so offensive. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like when I was there.
Sure I do.
Now it's now it's and I've said this, somebody, all a man has to do is look at a girl the wrong way and it's like, SA. I mean, it's just, you know what I
It's
mean? Did I
true.
like it? But then I'm thinking, well, no, that's just how things are, and that's how things were. Like I said, back in Richard Dawson times, people probably didn't like it, but that's just how it was, and that's
Yeah.
and so things people are just much more even touchy than 5 years ago. That's why it's like, because things are so sensitive now, it's like, well, hey, all the guy did was say, hey, cutie, and that's not that offensive, but she thinks it's the worst thing in the world. And so then you have to that's the thing, like, yeah, there's harassing periods of harassment and people asking for kisses and groping and things like that. That's wrong. But then also, if you just say, oh, sweetheart, you look very pretty today, giving somebody a compliment, a girl can take that the wrong way and not like that either. So then, do you still get rid of somebody for just telling a server that she looks nice today? Like, the customer, because the server didn't like it and you are afraid of a lawsuit? I mean, it's just,
Well, I
where does
would
the line
never.
get drawn?
Well, here's where I drew the line. I would never even have a meeting with the server unless I had a witness. I wouldn't have a meeting in my office with the server unless I had another manager or another witness to the meeting. Um, I would never. I was very careful in how I complimented a server, to the point where I heard about it. Well, why can't you be nice? Well, I don't want something misconstrued the wrong way. I would never hug a
Right, but
server.
even for a
Hello.
cut. Right, but you're in the position of power at the restaurant. I'm talking like about like a customer saying, "You look pretty," or "Your hair looks nice." Some girl can run with that. I mean, it doesn't. Or so that's not unruly and that's not harassing. But then you're going to get girls that'll take offense to that, and then
Yeah,
you do have. I mean, there's just obviously in our conversation. I'm just thinking about this. There's a lot to go over, and I look forward to doing these interviews with all of these bartenders and servers that have gone through it. And I'm sure even women managers have dealt with, to a certain
absolutely.
degree. Um, probably not as much, but I'm sure that women managers have had their level of harassment also. And then what do you do? What do you do?
Well,
And now it's so let's just hypothetically, this is just a big hypothetical. Say
uh-oh.
somebody gets thrown out of a restaurant. Not thrown out, but so let's just say there's a nice restaurant and somebody had been going there for a very long time. And they were a good customer in theory. And they had, wine locker and everything. And then they said something to a waitress and that the waitress didn't like it. Does the customer, though, is there any recourse from a customer of getting thrown out of the restaurant? Or would it be like, is there a potential for a lawsuit there? Or is there
I'm not sure
potential
I
of what
understand.
is being like, I guess because, places are gossipy. And so if somebody gets thrown out, it has to be handled correctly. Like if somebody gets thrown out because they told a girl that she looked pretty, and then the rumors out there, the management was saying, oh well, they were dancing around naked on the tables. I mean, is there like, do you understand? Because we talked about that earlier. Like,
Are you
lawsuits.
talking about throwing the customer out?
Yeah,
What are you saying? Asking the customer to leave?
yeah,
Um, well, there has to have been some harassing behavior more than just, gee, you look great today.
right.
Okay. Well, let's go back a little further. Back in my days before the hospitality business, I mean, I was in the corporate world. Back in my shipping days, I had a shipping company. And back when I worked for somebody, I went through corporate training on harassment a zillion years ago. I won't say how long ago, but it was a long time ago. But even then, no means no. Get away from me means no. If they ask you to go out, if they ask to see you in a personal situation and you say no, the server or bartender says no. No means no. That means don't ask again. So when they ask again, that's where it starts getting into some difficult areas if they don't want to let it go.
Yeah.
No means no. That's my saying.
Well, then it's okay. So then, do you give if a waitress comes over and says this person's been a problem? Do you give the person a warning, or do you say, "Sir, you have to leave now"?
It
Like,
depends
are
on how
there?
far it went. Did he put his
Yeah.
hands on her? Did he say something completely inappropriate? If he touched or said something inappropriate, he's got to go. He's got to go because customers will push you to see how far that they can go. Or that particular customer will push you to see how far that he can go. Or maybe come back and make another try. And I had those situations. I had it happen. So I guess every situation is its own situation. You can't say, well, I did this in this situation, so I'm going to do this in this situation.
Right.
They're all different. And you have to talk to the customers. And I have to say, basically, if they do it, they generally admit to it. They tell
Right,
you
because
what
they
they
probably
did.
don't think it's wrong. They probably don't think it's wrong. So
Well, that's
they're
the
like, "Yeah,
big
I did it.
problem. They don't think it's wrong.
Yeah, I did it." Yeah.
You know, a lot of these guys, they think it's 1971. They think it's not that it was right then. It
Right.
wasn't. Okay, I'm not saying in 1966 harassment was wrong. I mean, was right. It wasn't right. It's just that societal norms were different. And of course, I wasn't in the business then. I was a youngster. Okay, but it is what it is today. And people are litigious. And I'm not saying, as you said earlier, I'm not saying that the employee is always right because what you sometimes they're looking for a litigious situation.
Right.
And that's happened in the past. They're looking for that. So you have to be careful. You have to know the rules, and you have to be fair, and you try to navigate past it if you can. Um, it's really really difficult today.
What if
And,
what if
and
but
another part of this. Go ahead.
what if you have a customer that did wrong and it's wrong and but losing that or telling that customer to go is going to hurt the restaurant. The customer could do damage to the restaurant, like saying don't go there anymore. Like if it was like a big person, do you roll the dice and let them come back in and maybe set yourself up for a lawsuit, or do you have to roll the dice and let them try and do as much damage as they possibly can to you? I mean, what if it's like
After
a
you
big deal?
after you spend $200,000 in legal fees, there is no choice.
Yeah.
You don't roll the dice. You do it, you're gone. I don't care how large a customer you are.
Yeah.
Because no matter how large a customer you are, they're not going to spend $200,000 in a year. Not in that
Right.
style of restaurant.
Right.
You know, so, unless they're a daily customer at Del Frisco's in Manhattan, and I'm sure they would put up with it with even less. They would deal with even less of it, most likely than I would.
Yeah.
So, does that answer the question?
Yeah. Because I know, and this is for some small restaurateurs out there that are going to be listening to this. Like, well, but what if it's like a pillar of society and one of my good customers, and they could really wreck my restaurant and get people to not tell people to not come to the restaurant, but they did wrong. So do I appease them, or do I let the server go, or do I? This is for a small guy who doesn't know what to do, who is faced with this is what I'm asking. Say I have a small restaurant and I live in a small town, and the greatest person in town did this, and they could really wreck my restaurant if I angered them, but they did wrong, and I don't want to get sued by the server by letting them back in case they do it again. If they do it again, then she's going to sue me, but he could do damage to my restaurant. I have a tiny restaurant. I just started. What do I do?
Kick them out.
Kick them out.
No answer. It's going to hurt, but you got to do it. You kick them out. You can't allow it. If especially in small places, if you allow it, the other female employees see that you allow it. The customers may hear about me allowing it.
Yeah.
And you're emboldening the attacker. You're telling him that it's okay, and he's pushing the envelope. So the next time he's back, he's going to push the envelope a little further to see how far he can go. You got a problem.
Yeah.
Cut it off. Cut it off. In real life, not everybody's going to agree with me, but that's what I do.
Yeah.
You cut them off. Have to.
Yeah. I agree with you, but somebody that just is starting out or doesn't know or is afraid of somebody, doing the right thing is always going to be the best thing. Even being scared, like just do the right thing and it'll, I guess, come out in the wash is what I'm trying to say. It'll work itself out.
Oh,
like just do the right just do the right thing. If that person wants to wreck the restaurant or try to, then I guess that's what as long as you did the right thing, you won't.
And especially today, because they're going to go on one of the they're going to go on something like Yelp, and they're going to write a bad review, and you handle it as best you can. But that's what folks do today. They go on and they write bad reviews. Well, I'm going to get back at you. Or they make an anonymous call to the health department and tell them you have rodents running around. And people do very, very nasty things today.
Right.
And I could give tons of examples. In the health department, they have to investigate. And they'll come in and they'll say, gee, we know this is probably not true because they've investigated, they come in and check you out pretty regularly. They know if you've got a good record. Everything's on the system. So they'll come in and check because they have to check. It's their job. And then, and hopefully they give you a clean bill, and then that's the end of that. But it's really, really tough situation today. And you always do what's right.
Yeah.
It may hurt you, but you always do what's right.
Yeah, it can't. If you do what's right, it might hurt at the time, but it's not going to hurt later. You'll always come out of and have been doing and have done the right thing, as opposed to like try not to get hurt and not doing the right thing. Then years later, that guy is gonna go do something, and then you knew about it and you didn't do anything, and you were an enabler, and you understand what you know how things happen. Things snowball.
Go
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I had a customer put his hands on a server's rear end a couple of times. I kicked him out one time for a year, I think it was. He begged to come back. And I did it again. And after that, wouldn't allow them back in. So you kind of learn as you go. Um, you know, sometimes it doesn't come down to money. Most of the times it comes down to you have to do what's right.
Right.
You do what's right. These are human beings you're dealing with. You listen to both sides of the story. If you have a camera system, sometimes the customer can't lie because it's caught on camera.
Yeah.
So, and I had cameras in every direction. And the customers knew that. They could see them. I didn't have those small hidden cameras so that people didn't know. I wanted big cameras to try to stop the
To
problem.
deter, yeah, before it even happens. Yeah.
Yes. And people would say, why don't you have those little hidden cameras? I go, because I'm trying to deter the situation. I want the big ones that show that you're on camera.
Right. That's a
So
great idea. I mean, that could stop a lot of trouble before it even starts. That's something good that as a starting off restaurateur, if I was doing that, I would do that. That's a great idea. But
that was
this
my
is well,
philosophy.
this has been a great conversation, and I can't wait to, like I said, elaborate, and like you said, elaborate on this more with, people that are currently in the industry and currently facing these situations on a daily basis, and things like that. So we will definitely be back with everybody with more content coming in. Probably, what do you say, sometime this week with some of these interviews?
Yeah, we're going to try to get an interview or two set up this week. We're also going to talk about one of the things we're going to talk about with some of our interviews, or how to tip as opposed to how they do things in Europe. And we're
Right.
going to get some of the servers and bartenders ideas on what they think today, as opposed to how they do things in other countries, and whether it's right, whether they think it's right or it's wrong, or they really like how they do things today, or how the difference in big restaurants versus small restaurants. And so we're going to talk about that a lot too.
Well, good. Well, we're definitely looking forward to it. We'll be back with more content and looking forward to seeing you guys later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.